Well, here we are, Anthony and I, and we're going to be talking about a subject that I think will be of interest to a lot of Beatle fans out there. And Anthony thought of it, so why don't you tell us about it, Anthony?
Well, I figured we'd talk about 1970 Beatles. Say should they were really broken up in 1970, or they should have stayed together and had the string of hits that they did individually as a band. You know.
Yeah, so a lot of people have opinions that vary. I think Anthony and I, what's interesting is we're going to have different takes on this situation.
Let the folks see that.
Look at that.
As you can see, that's a takeoff of the Red and Blue albums. This is, of course, a bootleg. This album actually does not exist or was put out, how do they say it, by Capitol Records, put out legally, so to speak. But it's a very interesting concept. As you can see, it says the Beatles 1970 to 75. And then it has 4 solo pictures there, of course, from how they really looked in the 70s and performed individually. And it has the... now, what is this, Joe? Where's this building that they took these photos at?
The EMI building? What do I know? Yeah, where they were recording.
Yeah.
I hope. Anyway, I should know the exact answer to that. But my arm's already tired from holding this up. But anyway, here we go. So, what's your take on about them going into the 70s, Anthony?
Well, I remember, like we were talking with somebody we work with, and his opinion was that, songs like, My Love or any big 70s hit, let's see, My Sweet Lord or Mind Games or the Oh My or anything like that would have all been Beatles of the 70s. And in my opinion, it would have been Beatles of the 70s, but you have a different opinion as to, let's say with Wings, you figured that the people that McCartney had with him in Wings, Harrison couldn't play the guitar like Danny Lane played on My Love.
Well, I always wonder if George Harrison, no offense, could have kept up with the sound the way the 70s were going. I don't know.
On the guitar,
Ringo.
you
I'm
mean?
not worried about so much. Paul, I'm not worried about at all. And John, I don't know. But that's one thing. But another thing is, like I noticed, another song in that list there, the contents index, is Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, which is very Beatle-y. But the thing is, you got to remember, Linda McCartney singing on that. And as I'm looking at the songs here, like It Don't Come Easy is on there. But that's really, George and Ringo, more or less. And Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth, George's song. You wonder if John and Paul would have allowed George to have that more spiritual, religious tinge to the music, too. Because he went in his own spiritual, kind of religious, preachy way afterwards. And I'm wondering if that would have been allowed in the Beatles. What do you think?
I don't know. I think, it was a new decade. Music was changing, going in a different direction. Maybe they would have let him use more of his input and do things like that. But that's like all the things he learned in India, that kind of sound.
I was just going to say that.
They let the sitar and everything, yes.
So they did allow and welcome the Indian experimentation.
You hear that on the White Album, right?
Sgt. Pepper, a little bit on Revolver, The Inner Light, B-side, Lady Madonna, that kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe. But I just can't help thinking, a lot of the songs might have been the same, but would the recordings have been as good? Because I love, hey, My Sweet Lord.
Yeah.
But would it have sounded exactly as the record we know it that became a #1 hit if it had been the Beatles on it? I wonder. I guess so. But it's hard to tell. So many things were influenced by the fact that they are solo songs, actually make them what we like about them.
Well, like what top, like #1s were, Whatever Gets You Through the Night was #1. Silly Love Songs was #1. My Love was #1, and if I'm not mistaken, was Photograph #1 or Sweet 16?
Photograph was 1, Your 16 was 1.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I can always see Ringo doing they always could have gave him Your 16 to do and stuff. But you'd have to have all 4 Beatles. If they were the Beatles, you would have the Beatles, excuse me, like hold this. You would have the 4 Beatles singing on these songs instead of the people who were on the solo tracks. So that's why I just don't know if the songs would be the same, but obviously the recordings wouldn't be. And I wonder, like all 4 Beatles, say, performing on My Sweet Lord.
Yeah.
Or all 4 Beatles doing Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, instead of the way we came to know it. And instead of having Linda on it in the background, which I think is a lot of fun and charming and all that, would it be the same with George, say, in the back doing the backup and stuff? I don't know.
Well, whatever get you through the night, that's Elton John. Would that have been the same with the other three Beatles?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
You know?
That's a good point there. But moreover, I thought we would talk about, and this is something I thought we would disagree on, or, is about whether or not they should have continued into the 70s. That's what I thought we were mostly going to touch on. We have different opinions there.
I think they would. I think the 70s would have been no problem, I know you figure differently because you figure they went out on top and they were growing as individuals and going for different directions and expanding that way on their own accord. But I think all this music, if they would have stuck together, would have been number ones and would have been 70s Beatles and would have been as great as anything, just as good as anything in the 60s.
That's the thing. If we go by the 70s, a lot of fans like myself will extend that through into the 70s, or at least 75.
Yeah, well, this is 75.
Yeah, 75, 76 maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any argument there, because maybe the Beatles could have kept on into the early 70s. I always say, history shows that, of course, because they did break up when they broke up, that they did wind up, in fact, being kind of like classics and legends, and they went out, like you said, on top, and there was never a chance for them to falter or to get a lousy record in there or anything. Would they have ever had a bomb of a record? Would they have ever screwed up? I think it's inevitable.
With these songs, they wouldn't have. Like I said, I think they would have carried into mid-late 70s. I don't know, once the 80s rolled around, with the good music that came out in the 80s, what they would have done or what would have happened then. But my opinion, they could have gone through, I would say, 78 or so, around that ballpark,
Well, don't forget also, the songs that are on the disc that you're showing me.
Yeah.
That's a 2-part disc, right?
Yes.
2 volumes, actually.
Yeah.
Those they're picking the cream of the crop there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you take all the albums, there could arguably maybe some tracks on there. You wonder if the Beatles had done 3 Legs, would it sound as good? If the Beatles had, who knows? I don't know. Monkberry Moon. I guess a Monkberry Moon Delight is, as long as you got Paul singing on there, but you got Linda doing the bom 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 in the back. You don't have John. I don't know. You're not that familiar with that song, right?
No, not too much. No.
But that's what I mean. It's only like the hits, or the big tracks, not all hits.
Well, that's the thing. The big tracks sound like Beatlesque, So I'm thinking, it could have been, but like you said, you're taking into the other factors. It's different musicians with different sounds that they were playing with.
Yeah.
So would it sound the same or as good as if they were the 4 Beatles? I'm kind of thinking, it probably would, but
the songs are there.
Yeah, but there are, I guess, there are like Danny Lane. I guess technically you think he's a better guitarist than George Harrison.
Oh,
right?
I'm not saying that necessarily.
I
don't know. I won't go on record, folks, as saying that.
I wouldn't either, but I would think, if the musicians and Wings could do what the other 3
But we're
Beatles
talking
could
about
do,
I'm talking about like Jimmy McCullough, who played on Junior's Farm and stuff like that. That's a pretty damn good guitar solo. Would George have been able to play like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just one example. I was thinking of a song like Maybe I'm Amazed, which is a Paul classic, and I'm talking about the version. There's a live version, but I'm talking about the studio one that's on the first McCartney solo album. Like Paul plays all the instruments himself on that, and that's what gives it its sound. That's what it is.
Yeah.
If it had been a Beatles track, it would be different. And would it be as good? Of course, we probably wouldn't know any other. If it was done, we wouldn't know what it sounded like otherwise. We just take it for granted.
Yeah, but even with like the solo stuff, the solo Paul, the solo John, when they were the Beatles, okay, we're going to do a John song, they sounded good. We're going to do a Paul song, they sounded good or great, or, so could have been the same concept in this. That's just, what I think.
Well, this is interesting food for thought, and what do you folks think out there? This is a pretty good discussion, and I'm glad Anthony thought about it. We just decided to do an outdoor video here. So let us know in the comments what you think. I think it's a good topic. Right down there.
Yeah.
Later.
Bye.